Oh, Emily, you fixed your computer. Oh, no. Oh, no, you didn't. You didn't. No.
Okay, here we go. Just a point when we get to it, I left out part of the translation of verse 7.
Just how you pronounce third line, first word. Hinini?
No, Hineni.
Hinini. Okay, that's right. Okay, thank you.
Hineni.
Rabbi-
Yeah, I struggled with that too.
And
Hinini.
Rabbi Sam, I think you explained this last week, but whatever, anyway. There's a word in the seventh verse. It's the last word. I don't know how to explain it. It's the third word from the end. And so why is that?
But why is it he, not heave?
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Again,
Has something
so
to do with
in order
vowel?
to be heave, you'd
Yeah.
have to have a shva under the vav.
Because of the aleph? Does it know?
No, under the vav.
Under the vav.
Under the vav, there'd have to be a shva, then you
So
would
if
say
that's a
heave.
consonant, it needs a verb.
It needs a vowel.
It's a
A
vowel.
vowel, yeah, it needs a vowel. So if
What
that's
is the
consonant, it
aleph
needs a vowel.
for?
So in the Torah, it's written as Hey Vav Aleph,
Yeah,
which normally we would pronounce as who.
right. Oh,
Or ho.
But that who is later in the grammar that's developed, who is the masculine third person pronoun, he or it. He is with a yud, is the feminine third person pronoun singular, she or it. In the Torah, we don't know if they pronounced it as who or he. It's written as if it was pronounced who, which would make Ephrat and Derech masculine nouns. However, according to the later grammar, places are always feminine. So it may have been that places were more gender fluid,
mhm.
and later they became gender specific. You know, the maggots of the Hebrew grammar 1800 years ago decided that there are only two genders and places are always female. There were no trans places.
Do you also say Shimeon or Shimon in this translation?
Shimon. It can't be Shimyon because it's an ayin.
Okay.
But therefore, even though it's written as who, it's pronounced as a feminine pronoun he.
That's special. And why would, without vowels, how would you know it was who and not ho? Is there no word ho?
There is no word ho. Not until you get to American slang.
Yeah. Ho, ho, ho.
Oh, you hoe the land.
Oh, that's one of the hoes.
Santa Claus.
All right. No, then there's three of them.
Yeah.
I think he has a more vulgar hoe in mind.
Yeah, the one there's usually two of them.
I got it. I think of the Eretz.
So, verse 3. So Yosef has heard that dad is not well. Dad is coming, dad has been put on hospice. And so he takes his two sons and he goes to greet dad. And Vayomer Yaakov el Yosef, and dad says to Yosef, so Vayomer Yaakov el Yosef, El Shaddai nir'a elai beluz, ve'eretz Canaan, vayevarech oti. So we don't know again if this is an introduction to something else or mind wandering a little bit, but the first thing he says to his son is, El Shaddai nir'a elai. El Shaddai appeared to me. El Shaddai is one of the names of God.
Can you s- uh, parse the verb there?
So Vayomer, and he
Well,
said,
good
and the
on that
he,
one. He appeared.
okay, yeah, so I'm still on El Shaddai.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Why, do we know, is there a significance to the use of the word? I mean, El Shaddai isn't, I don't think, used all that often as the name for God. Is there a reason?
So El Shaddai is the name that God revealed to Abraham.
Oh, okay.
God said to Abraham, I am El Shaddai.
Used in Christianity a lot, Shaddai. I've never heard it.
No, I wouldn't, it
Right.
does not carry forward. When you look at your mezuzah, there's a shin on the mezuzah. Every mezuzah has a shin, which stands for the name Shaddai.
Hmm.
And translators will usually translate as El Shaddai, God Almighty. Shaddai does appear in Christian literature in that form as God Almighty.
Mhm.
God on high, God of the breasts, God of the mountains, twin mounts, but it's simply a name. Most likely, we have a lot of ancient Near Eastern gods, and especially in the Canaanite region, and many of them were taken as other forms of Yud-He Vav-He, other forms of the Israelite God. And the history of how all these names came to be, but El Shaddai is the name that God gives to Abraham, says, I am El Shaddai. Later, God will say to Moses, they knew me as El Shaddai, but now I'm going to tell you my real name. So El Shaddai does appear in the patrilineal, in the patriarchal, the patriarchal period as the God that is specific to the ancestors of Yisrael. So I prefer not to translate El Shaddai, but to keep it as El Shaddai because it's a name. So Nir'ah, Eli, Nir'ah, the root is Ra'ah, see, Nir'ah is the passive. Was seen Eli to me or shown to me. So El Shaddai appeared to me. And that was specifically Beluz in the area of Luz. And this was, you'll recall, way back in Jacob's early travels. He sees the ladder, he's got Beit El, and we're told at that time that Jacob called it Beit El, but it was known as Luz. And the more common known name, probably by the time these stories was written, was Luz, a Canaanite city, perhaps, or an Aramean city. And in Israel, it becomes Beit El. But here he says, God appeared to me in Luz, the Eretz Canaan, in the land of Canaan, Vayivarech oti, and blessed me. So I get to bless you because God blessed me, is basically the statement Jacob's making. Vayomer Eli, and that is the God El Shaddai said Eli to me. So this is the blessing. He's recounting the blessing that God gave to him way back early in his first travels. Hineni mafrecha v'hirbiticha unataticha likhal amim v'natati et haaretz hazot lizaracha acharecha achuzat olam. So this is what God, El Shaddai, said to him. Jacob says, God said to me, Hineni,
Behold,
behold me. And when you say it simply as a word by itself, you say hineni. And we have that all the time when Abraham and Isaac are walking along, and Isaac says, Dad, and Dad says, hineni. Anytime you get called, hineni, I am here. Religious school kids learned that long ago. Their name got called in class, and by the teacher, and the kid would say, hineni. Or they would just say, po, here. And some of the kids would say, lopo. They really should have said lo kol kachpo, which would mean not all here.
True.
So, hineni mafrecha v'hirbiticha. Behold, mafrecha, I am pereing you. The root is peri, fruit.
Oh,
So I am fructifying you. I am making you fruitful. V'hirbiticha, and the root of that is rav, many. Hirbiti is then I am causing you to be many. I am causing to be many, and then cha you. So I am making you fruitful. I am fruitifying you, and I am making you multitude. I am multiplying you. I am causing you to be a multitude. So before Jacob even meets his first wife, God has already promised him, according to this, God has blessed him and said, you are going to be very fruitful and you're going to be really have lots of kids. Unataticha, Natan is give. Unatati, and I will give. Unataticha, and I will give you. Likhal amim. A kahal is a community, a gathering of people. A kihila is a congregation. It's a community. And you will be a community of peoples. Unatati, and I will give. Et haaretz hazot, I will give this land. Haaretz hazot, this land. And again, notice zot is feminine because eretz, a place, is a feminine noun. So I will give this land, l'zaracha acharecha, to your seed after you. So letu zera, seed, zaracha, your seed, acharei, afterward, after, acharecha, after you. Achuzat olam, an eternal possession. And achuzah is a possession, an inherited possession. So this land, and he was on the area of northern Canaan, and God said, I will multiply you, I will make you fruitful, I will give all of this land to your seed after you. Jacob is saying this now to Joseph, who is his seed, and from whom will be more seeds.
is this the, I would call the offending line that gives Israel the whole land, everything?
Well, this is part of it's consistent throughout Genesis, and then later through the rest of the Torah, and into the rabbinic commentaries. That Rashi even says when we get to a couple of weeks ago, the statement, this month will be for you the first month, the first mitzvah, the first commandment by God to the now peoples of Israel rather than the conglomerate children or tribes. God says, this is your first month. And Rashi says, why don't we start the Torah here, the beginning of the history of the people of Israel? And Rashi says, because God starts at the creation to show that God actually owns all the earth and God can portion out the earth any way God wants to, and the Torah is all about God portioning a portion of the earth to Israel.
So what would the boundaries of Canaan be now?
Well, that's a difficult,
Disputed.
and yeah. What is this land is always the question. This land that I'm giving to you, is that the land of biblical Canaan in the time purportedly of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Is that the land that was the largest boundary of the kingdom of David?
Mhm. But do you know what it was at the time, this story?
There's no, they don't have a lot of good boundary markers to find.
Yeah.
You know, we have the story of Jacob when he's leaving Lavan, sets up that boundary marker and says, this will be the boundary between Israel and Aramea, somewhere up in the Golan Heights or the northern Syria or someplace in there. So we don't know, and we don't know if this land included just the Canaanites or also includes the Hittites, because we know that Abraham bought Hittite land. So yeah, we don't have a firm sense of biblical boundaries. But clearly the biblical author of this stuff says we're living here because God told us to live here. And God promised it to Jacob.
Will you go back to the beginning of the fourth line? Vanatati,
Vinatati et haaretz hazot, and I will give this land.
yeah, it's the verbs that, this land. And what's the
L'zaracha, to your seed. Eretz zot, this land. Haaretz hazot, this definite article land. And it will go to your seed after you. And it will be an achuzat olam, an eternal possession. Problematic, of course, is olam, which sometimes is translated as world, universe. So a possession of the world, possession of the universe, but olam also is a temporal statement, meaning that the biblical authors already knew about Einsteinian time-space. Olam is a space-time statement. 5, V'ata, and now. So V'ata shnei vanecha hanoladim lecha be'eretz Mitzrayim ad bo'i elecha Mitzrayma lihem Ephraim u'Menashe ki Reuven b'Shimon yihyu li. So V'ata, and now, a statement of definitive time. Right now, this is our transitional period. This is our transitional time. From now on, Shnei banecha hanoladim lecha, the two sons, your two sons, Shnei, two, banecha, your sons, hanoladim, the born ones, the births, lecha, to you, be'eretz Mitzrayim, in the land of Egypt, ad bo'i elecha, up to my coming to you. So v'ata, and now shnei banecha hanoladim lecha, the two sons that were born to you in the land of Egypt, be'eretz Mitzrayim, ad bo'i, bo come, bo'i, my coming, ad, up to, or prior to. So the two sons that were born to you in Egypt before I came down here, ad bo'i elecha, up to my coming to you.
All right, over there.
Mitzrayma again is Egypt word. So before I came down to Egypt now in this particular travel, lihem, to me, them. Literally, lihem, to me, them. In English, I have them. Li is I have. Ein li is I don't have. But it's not a having, it's not a verb in Hebrew the way we make it in English. It's a statement of possession. I own them, they belong to me. Ephraim and Manasseh, and notice here, by the way, Jacob places Ephraim's name before Manasseh, even though Manasseh is the older and Ephraim is the younger, which is what's going to play out in the other version of the story from the northern kingdom in the verse 8 forward. So by the time this stuff is being written, from the standpoint of the biblical author, the northern kingdom is tonally the kingdom of Ephraim. And in later biblical works, sometimes Joseph and Ephraim are synonymous. So the tribe of Joseph becomes the tribe of Ephraim, and Manasseh sort of is sloughed off secondarily. When the southern kingdom, the red things, talk about it, they also talk about Joseph in the same way in which the northern kingdom talks about Ephraim.
So you mean Joseph and not Jacob?
No, Joseph. Joseph's sons are Manasseh and Ephraim.
Sorry.
Joseph's sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, get an equal portion to Joseph's brothers. Thus, Joseph gets a double portion as if he were the firstborn, which is a statement of the northern kingdom. The inheritor of the blessing of Jacob in the northern kingdom is Joseph, which is Ephraim. And thus, Ephraim's name is always going to be placed before Manasseh's. In this later story, we don't even need to explain why Ephraim is placed before Manasseh. In the earlier root story down below, we're going to find out why Ephraim is placed before Manasseh. And that's this week and next week that we'll get. But here, Ephraim is placed before Manasseh and doesn't need any further explanation. So I own them. They belong to me, Ephraim and Manasseh, and they will be like Kiruvain v'Shimon, like Reuben and Shimon.
How are they like Reuben and Shimon?
Reuben and Shimon.
Why?
Reuben is Jacob's firstborn,
Oh.
and Shimon is Jacob's secondborn. It's Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. Yehuda is the fourth born. And when we get to the red story in March, we're going to find out that Reuben is disqualified from possessing the blessing of Jacob. Shimon and Levi are disqualified for receiving the blessing of Jacob. And therefore, in the red story, Yehuda is the inheritor of the blessing of Jacob. Because the red story is a Yehuda, a southern kingdom, a Judah story. But the blue story is a northern kingdom story, and it's an Ephraim story. And so now we skip all the way down, not only to the youngest children of Jacob, but to the grandchildren of Jacob who have been elevated to youngest children. And the youngest grandchild of Jacob, Ephraim, is predominant over everybody else. And this is the statement that, in a sense, Ephraim and Manasseh become the 13th and 14th sons, or the 12th part 1 and the 12th part 2. Although Joseph is really 11, not 12. And Benjamin also gets discarded later. But Joseph is the favored son, and so Joseph, son number 11, gets 2 portions that should have gone to son number 1. And of the 2 portions that Joseph gets, Joseph's younger one, Ephraim, gets the bulk of that double portion. So this is
Any particular reason?
because it says so.
Well, Joseph doesn't get a portion unlike his brothers.
Right. Joseph gets no portion, Ephraim gets a portion, and Manasseh gets a portion.
So much for being the favorite. I don't know.
Well, so he's the favorite, and therefore his 2 sons, the grandsons that were born when Jacob didn't get to see them born, each get the portion. So yes, there are 12 tribes who are the 12 sons of Jacob, and there are 12 tribes who are the 12 landed tribes who include Ephraim and Manasseh and cut out Levi.
Wait, say that again. They're 2 different.
So if you count the 12 tribes as the sons of Jacob, they include Joseph. If you count the 12 tribes as the tribes of landed tribes, they include Ephraim and Manasseh, which means 2 others have to get left out. One of them that gets left out is Joseph, because Ephraim and Manasseh get his double portion. And the other one that gets left out is Levi. Levi gets no land.
So Joseph might not be upset because his kids are getting it, right?
Right. Joseph says, you know, if I got a double portion, I would have parsed it out to my 2 kids anyway. But later we're going to find out, Joseph said, I would have given my firstborn Manasseh the best part and Ephraim the second. And Jacob's going to say, nope, doesn't work that way. Ephraim the younger gets the best part and Manasseh gets the leftovers.
On account
Just
of
like
that.
I did with my brother Esau, just like I did with you, with all your brothers ahead of you. Jacob says, we're going to continue dysfunctionality of inheritance down through the generations.
How come,
Guess what'll happen?
how come the other sons of Jacob, the other 12, they must have had kids? How come none of those kids are included?
Not part of the story.
Well, because they only get the single portion that their parents their father inherited.
Oh, it's because Joseph.
Gets a double portion.
I get it.
And he
But
gets the double portion, not by getting the double portion, but by Jacob adopting his 2 sons and giving them an equal portion to the other brothers. So everybody gets 1/12 of the inheritance. But Ephraim
What's wrong
get a
with
12
Levi?
and Manasseh gets a 12, just like everybody else got a 12, except Levi, who doesn't get anything.
How come?
Because Levi is going to become the landless priestly tribe.
The Kohanes.
Well, from Levi will come the Kohen.
Yeah. I
Well,
just
what
want to make sure my family got enough.
Why is it 12? I mean, why didn't he just say, okay, I've got 14 sons and I'll divide among the 14?
Well, because he only gives out 12 portions.
Why is that?
Because that's the way it was by the time this was written.
It is a dozen. That's always an
again,
interesting.
Doesn't.
We're going back to, this was written at a time that the landed tribes are already defined, but they're defined in such a way that Ephraim, who was not a son of Jacob, but a grandson of Jacob, is now the preeminent tribe of the northern kingdom. And Judah, who is a son of Jacob, is the preeminent tribe in the southern kingdom. So these stories are explaining how our ancestors did that led us to where we are. And you're going to see in the blessing in the the red story that will come up in March of the blessing of the sons. Jacob blesses the sons according to the southern kingdom definition of the 12 sons, and Joseph is just one of them. Jacob's going to have something interesting to say about Simeon and Levi, which will explain what happened to Simeon and explain what happened to Levi. So they are verse 6. Umoladetcha asher holadeta acharehem lecha yihiyu al shem achehem yikaru benachalatam. So moladetcha and moladetcha, moladet, the ones who you bear, cha, who are born, it's passive, who are born to you, asher holadeta acharehem, that you birth acharehem, after them, lecha yihiyu, they belong to you. To you they will be. So any children born after Manasseh and Ephraim, you get to call your children. But Ephraim and Manasseh, I get to call my children. Al Shem achehem yikaru benachalatam, and therefore on the name of your brothers, they will be called in their inheritance. So they will be named as if they were a son of Jacob, because they are a tribal group who actually derive from the grandson of Jacob.
Can you break down on your brothers for me?
Yeah, al shem achehem. So on the name of your brothers, yikaru, they will be called benachalatam. That is, according to the names of your brothers.
Yeah,
So
but on your brothers, that word itself, can you break it down?
Well, on name of your brothers, al shem, on name, achehem, your brothers.
But brothers, I thought it was a different word. Is this a different?
Ach is brothers.
Oh,
Achehem, their brothers.
okay.
So they will be called like their brothers.
Where-
Not like that is, their brothers will not be treated, they will not be treated as if they are the nephews and their brothers are the uncles, but rather they will be treated like a brother. Their name will be among the inheritances. This is now the tribal statement. They will be called like brothers, on the name of the brothers. So you list the names of all of the sons of Jacob, that is all the brothers of each other. And in the northern kingdom story, Joseph is not named, but rather Ephraim and Manasseh are named as if they were the brothers of their uncles, not the nephews of their uncles.
The word benach,
Nachalah is that's again, that's another word for their inherited possession. So they all receive their portions. They all receive when Joshua takes them across, each of the tribes, as Moses has said, gets a certain area of land. They get a possession. And these two boys will get possessions. Yikaru, they will be called.
but the word just means in possessions?
In their possessions, or in their portioning out of the land, in
Oh, I
their
see.
inheriting the land.
Is the word
But-
ach, there's not that word nacha, it has nothing to do with ach.
No, nachal. And the defined borders.
Huh?
It's different than ahuzat. Inheritance.
Right. There are different forms of ways in which you inherit or possess. I'm going to pause for a moment. Oops. Let's. Just have to pause for a moment.
Ali.
And I,
Okay, so the achuzah is, in a sense, the inheritance. The nachala is the portioning out, the possessing of the inheritance. So when you take over the land and the tribes each get a named area, it's saying your sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, their tribal name of their land will be on the same level, at the same level of naming as their brothers. Now they're brothers. Formerly their uncles, now they're brothers.
Why do
So,
you suppose he did that as opposed to including Joseph?
Well, because
well,
he gave it to
he
his
forced,
sons.
yeah, he says to Joseph, your two sons are going to get the share of the land that would have gone to you doubled. What's an interesting statement here is any children that are born after you, those, verse 6, those who are born umoladatcha asher holadata acharehem lecha yihiu, those who are born after you, they will belong to you. They're actually not going to get any inheritance of the land once the tribes become the landed tribes. Jacob says to Joseph, and if you want to leave anything for your children who are born after these two, then you're going to have to figure out where it's coming from because you don't get anything.
but it makes sense because he's a rich, mighty guy, right?
Yeah. So any children, by the way, we never hear about more children from Joseph. Any children born to Joseph after Ephraim and Manasseh only get to inherit whatever he earned in Egypt. They get Egyptian inheritance.
Well, did these two kids start living with the rest of the tribe in Goshen? Or don't we know?
Apparently, yes. Because starting in Exodus, we get named children of Ephraim and children of Manasseh.
Hmm.
So Joseph, it would seem, never actually lives in Goshen.
Hmm.
And Ephraim and Manasseh are taken from Egypt and resettled in Goshen as if they were part of the 12 tribes, 12 sons of Jacob.
You think he did that because he knew Joseph couldn't leave his place and he wanted people who were.
Yeah, did he, again, is this story being told actually of what happened at the time, or is this story being told later when we don't have a tribe of Joseph in the land of Israel? We only have a tribe of Ephraim and a tribe of Manasseh. And so it explains how we end up with no Joseph and with an Ephraim and Manasseh.
Is it
But yes, we could also, yeah.
Well, he didn't represent himself to the Pharaoh and those folks that he was Hebrew, did he?
Who's he?
Joseph.
When Joseph to his brothers is the second in command in all of Egypt.
Right. But did he represent when he went to Egypt and then he got advanced? Do we think he was known to be a Hebrew?
Oh, yes.
He was, okay.
Because remember, Potiphar's wife says that Hebrew guy you brought into our house.
Oh, okay.
Is the one who can read dreams.
Okay.
So yes, we have Joseph stays in Egypt not only until he dies, but until they leave.
Mhm.
So any children of Joseph are born still in the palace, still in Egypt, and never go to Goshen, never become part of the Hebrew people. If one wants to have a little midrash, one can say the later children of Joseph became the Asapsusim, or the the Eruv Rav, they were the mixed multitude that left with the Israelites when they finally leave under Moses.
But you said he had no more children that you know of.
That we are told about because
Yeah.
it's no longer a Goshen Israelite story. But according to his father, apparently he's going to have more children. Because father doesn't say, if you have more children, he says, and your more children. Doesn't say, ve'im moladetcha, and if you bear children. It says, and your children born to you, after them you get. And so they are raised somehow in Joseph's inheritance of Egyptian wealth. And then we can write the midrash that it's Joseph's children who are no longer tribal, who leave with the Israelites when they leave under Moses. I've not seen that anywhere, but it sounds like a fun midrash. But in any case, Joseph now, his name will be known as Joseph / Ephraim and Manasseh. And in later biblical writings that follow from this author, Ephraim and Yosef are synonymous terms for the tribe. And we even get some later writings that say, Yosef, that is Ephraim. So Ephraim and Manasseh are taken from the palace and moved to Goshen and treated like their uncles, as siblings. Verse 7 then, so let's go to verse 8. And all of a sudden, we have in verse 8, Vayar Yisrael et bnei Yosef, Vayomer mi ele. And Israel saw the two sons of Joseph and said, who are these? Which following verse 6 seems a little strange that after talking about Ephraim and Manasseh in all of this way, looks up and says, hey, who are those two with you?
Yeah, what is that about?
And why are they using
Well,
Israel rather than Jacob?
he's Israel rather than Jacob. This is a different version of, perhaps an older version of the Northern Kingdom story. And this is where biblical critics then subdivide the E into an E and a P. And the compiler of all of these different scrolls, stories, texts, the editor-redactor, went from verse 6 to verse 8 in one scroll, verse 6 perhaps, in a separate scroll from the also the same group of people, verse 8, and said, wait a minute, I have to include both of these scrolls in my later text, but they don't really make sense. So I'm going to put in a little text so that you forget that they don't make sense.
So that's what verse 7 is?
That's what verse 7 is. That's why it's in black. It's the editor-redactor's version of the final scroll, working from the multiple scrolls in which he's looking at. And so the editor-redactor has Jacob say, Va'ani bevo'i mi padan meta alai Rachel. And that connects to the very beginning where Jacob, remember, said, as I was traveling, El Shaddai blessed me. And so it makes sense that after that he would say, and on my way back, Va'ani bevo'i mi padan meta alai Rachel, be'eretz Canaan, baderech ba'od kivrat eretz, lavo Ephrata, ve'ekbereha sham bederech Ephrat hi beit lachem. So va'ani, and on my way back from Laban, bevo'i mi padan, and in my coming from Padan, Meta alai Rachel, died on me, Rachel. So on my way back with the children and the wealth and everything that I accumulated while I was with Lavan, and it recalls to us the story where Rachel died in childbirth with Benjamin. So Rachel died, and she died be'eretz Canaan. She died in the land of Canaan. Baderech ba'od kivrat eretz lavo Ephrata. So she died in Canaan. Baderech, in the land, in the road, on the way. Ba'od kivrat eretz. So I was sort of getting close to, I was further along, getting close to the border of the land, Lavo Ephrata, to come to Ephrat. Ephrata is toward Ephrat word. So I'm getting near my destination of Ephrat, and Rachel died.
What is Ba'od?
The ode literally in more. So, or in this case, it's more of a not yet. The ode kivrat eretz. So I'm still on the road. Was still on the road in the approaching of the land in the shorter version, in the shorter path of the land. I'm on getting ready to come into Ephrat. And then the part that I forgot to translate, Va'ek bereha, and I buried her. Kavar, burial place. Ekbera, I buried. Va'ek and I buried. Va'ek bereha, and I buried her. Sham, I buried her there. She died in childbirth along the road, getting near Ephrat, as I was coming into Ephrat, and I just pulled off the road and dug a pit and stuck her in it.
Well, you don't, did she really die in childbirth?
That's an older, yes, back in the story of Benjamin.
Okay.
As Benjamin is being born, she breathes her last.
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
What is, could you go back, Kavora, getting near? Is that Kavora is approaching?
So Kivrat Eretz, so I'm in the, I see the sign saying Ephrat 8 kilometers away.
So
So
it's
I'm
like-
getting close, approaching in the land. Kivar is already. Ba'od Kivar, I was just about to, more getting ready.
Lavot.
Lavo to come. Ephrata into Ephrat, toward Ephrat. So I'm ready to land, get in Ephrat, and Rachel dies, and I bury her there. Baderech Ephrat, on Ephrat Road, on the way to Ephrat.
But there's nothing that says childbirth here, right?
No, she died.
Yeah.
Here she just died. We're recalling the story way back when Benjamin was born, that she died in childbirth. Here we're simply told she died along the way. We don't need to be told the rest because we've already heard that story. And Jacob is recalling here, or his early losses that are still so much a part of him. Because on the road home, he loses his favorite wife. When he gets home, he'll lose his favorite son. So his mind is wandering, perhaps is what the biblical author wants us to think by putting in this story. His mind wanders. He's just finished blessing Ephraim and Manasseh, talking about how they're going to be apportioned out, perhaps talking in a veiled way that now Ephraim and Manasseh are coming back to Goshen with him, while Joseph will stay in the palace. And his mind wanders, and he says, and you know, Joseph, your mom died on my way home from Padan Aram. before we got to Ephrat, along the road of Ephrat, and I buried her there. And then the biblical author, the editor redactor says, Ephrat, that's where I buried her. He Beit Lachem. It is Beit Lechem. So here we're told that the Ephrat area is known now as Beit Lechem. But the Canaanite name of the town was Ephrat. And the tomb of Rachel is in Beit Lechem. Although it doesn't say he built her a tomb. It just says he stuck her on the roadside.
See, Bethlehem is Bethlehem.
Yes,
Is it Beit Lahem or Lahem?
it's Beit Lachem when it's the end of a phrase. It's Beit Lechem what's in the middle of a phrase. It's Bethlehem when it's transliterated into English letters. So it's Va'ani b'vo'i mipadan meta alai Rachel be'eretz Canaan baderech ba'od kivrat eretz lavo Ephrata ve'ekbereha sham bederech Ephrat he Beit Lachem.
What does Lahem mean?
Bread,
House of bread.
A house of bread?
lechem. Like Geffen, Gafen, Eretz, Aretz.
It's
We
a funny
take the-
name. The house of bread.
Yes, Beit Lechem, the house of bread.
It's a great name.
Yeah, it's
Right.
the Arnold Bakery factor in ancient Israel.
I think of it as an area of lots of wheat.
Yeah, could be, or where the wheat was brought because they had a stream for the grinding stones, the mill stream.
Or it's, bread always means staff of life.
Right, bread is, yeah,
So that whatever it is, it's a
yeah, it was the farmer's market of the area,
land of plenty,
land of Goshen.
land of Goshen.
All right, finally, Vayar Yisrael et Bnei Yosef Vayomer Mi'ela. So now his mind has wandered, according to the interpolation by the editor redactor, and all of a sudden he looks up and says, "What's up? Where am I now? Who are these guys? Who are those two?"
So maybe he's got dementia.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. He's 130 odd years old. And,
Yeah, because otherwise, what it explains it. He just talked to him about his sons, and now he's telling him who are they?
right, and we're going to learn in next week's portion that his eyes are dimming.
Ah,
So Vayomer Yosef El Aviv, Banai hem asher natan li Elohim bazeh, Vayomer kachem na Elai va'avarachem, and Vayar Yisrael, Israel looks at Bnei, Israel saw the two and said, yeah, who are these? Verse 9, Vayomer Yosef, Joseph says, El Aviv, to his father, Banai hem, my sons, them. They are my sons. You know, the ones you were just talking about before your mind wandered. Asher natan li Elohim, that God gave to me. Asher natan li, that gave to me. Elohim, gave to me. Bazeh, in this, that is, here in this land. Vayomar, and Yisrael is going to say, Kachem na Elai, take them, please, to me. Va'avarachem, and I will bless them. So he talked about they're going to receive, and remember, Jacob is the guy who thought that birthrights and blessings were two different things. So now he claims, one can say he claimed the birthright, told Joseph about the birthright of them, and now he's going to give them the blessing as well that would have gone to Joseph, but now goes to his sons. And so the story would have actually made sense without verse 9. Who are these? But the editor redactor apparently couldn't get rid of verse 9. Who are these? So he sticks in the mind-wandering dementia moment, perhaps, whatever, for Jacob to then move the story forward. And that forward moving of the story is what you will read for next week. And as Yitzchak's eyes were dim, so Israel, Jacob is going to be feeling the weight of his age. 10. Ve'enei Yisrael kavdu mizoken.
Wait. Start
Verse-
again, please.
Verse 10.
Yeah.
Ve'enei Yisrael kavdu mizoken lo yuchal lirot vayagesh otam elav vayishak lahem vayichabek lahem. 11. Vayomer Yisrael el Yosef ra'o fanecha lo filalti v'hine her'a oti Elohim gam et zarecha. 12. Vayotze Yosef otam me'im birkav vayishtachu la'apav artsa. 13. Vayikach Yosef et Shnehem et Ephraim bimino mismol Yisrael ve'et Menashe bismolo mimin Yisrael vayagesh elav. Great stage directions we'll talk about next week. Vayishlach Yisrael et Yemino vayashet al rosh Ephraim V'hu hatzair ve'et smolo al rosh Menashe sikel et yadav ki Menashe habechor. 15. Vayevarech et Yosef vayomar ha'Elohim asher hithalchu avotai lefanav Avraham v'Yitzchak ha'Elohim haro'eh oti me'odi ad hayom hazeh. And then the following week, we get the actual blessing.
I won't be here next week. I have to work at church.
Okay. So we will be working through